In seminary, I read a book, just one book, that's it. I'm kidding. In seminary, I read a book from the 1960s by an Episcopal priest named Gibson Winter, wherein, among the many things that he says that people tend to make choices about where to shop, where to eat, where to live and work and worship, based on the picture that they have of themselves. These are subtle, almost unconscious perceptions, the basis of which is simply, do I think I could belong here? Are these the people with whom I can see myself with? Is this the kind of place where I think I could be? Winter says that this places a big role in where we choose to live and where we choose to work and where we choose to worship. Perhaps you've been in the market before for a house and you went around looking at different places and you simply got the feeling that a house or a street or a neighborhood was too swanky for you, or too loud, or too garish, or too rustic, or simply not the part of town where you think you want to be. Or maybe you've applied for a job and gotten through the interview and the visit, and everything they've said sounds good and makes sense, but you've just gotten the indescribable feeling that this is probably not for me. We do this with church, too. It's hard and vulnerable work to visit a new church for the first time, or to go looking for a church home. And the very first thing that we get from a church when we visit is the vibe. You walk through the front doors for the first time, and you get this sense. Is this decorated and shaped like what I think a church sanctuary is supposed to be decorated and shaped like? Some people really like a Christ Lutheran kind of sanctuary. This is almost exactly like the church that I grew up in. Some people prefer the austerity of a St. George's. Other people prefer the simplicity of a big auditorium with a big stage at the front. You walk in for the first time to a new church and you think maybe, oh, thank God there's an organ. Or, oh, thank God there's not a drum set. You walk in for the first time and maybe you think, oh, thank God there's a drum set and not an organ. You take a look around at the people and you think, are these people who I could see myself belonging with? Or perhaps you think, gosh, I wish this congregation was more my age. Maybe you see the pastor and you wonder, is this somebody who I can see myself connecting with and being cared for by? Are the sermons and the teachings that are offered here, do they challenge me in the right ways? Do they match my sensibilities about what I think we're doing here? I don't say any of this to trap anyone and say, making perceptions bad. But rather, I mean to say, making perceptions is normal. Imagining whether or not you'll be able to belong somewhere is normal. And in the gospel reading this morning, the question of belonging is at the forefront. When you make your invitations to your wedding banquet, you invite all the people that have given you a sense of belonging over the years. You don't invite random people, you don't invite strangers, you invite your people. And the hitch in this passage is that the people who are invited don't come. And so God, the inviter, makes the choice to open the doors of the banquet to anyone and everyone whom they find. The good and the bad, the normal and the weird, the austere and the rustic, the organ types and the drum set types. They all get invited into the same space so that the wedding hall is filled with guests. If it was me and the invitations that I made were not accepted, I probably would have gotten married very quietly and then gone home to live under a rock. But I'm not God. And in this passage, God makes the choice instead to invite everyone off the street so that the party can happen. The invitation list grows to include everyone, and the guest list becomes everyone who accepts the invitation. Again, what a challenge this gets to be to us. I do not desire to party with everyone. I want it to be my friends, my family, the people with whom I share familiarity and backstory. I want it to be with my people. But this gospel passage and God's open invitation gets to challenge us because if we are honest, the shape of the Christian landscape today is that we get to choose with whom we associate and with whom we work and serve and worship. We know that over the long 2,000-year history of the church has been rife with disagreement and with tension, and that more often than not, the solution to disagreement in the church has been not reconciliation, but schism. We know that the early church grew into multiple branches, and then into a whole host of denominations, and even further today into an almost like micro-niche level of choice. I think there's something like 200 denominations officially registered in the United States alone. And this diversity is well represented in Fredericksburg. Think of how many options you have just within a 5-minute drive of this church. Catholic, Episcopal, Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, another Episcopalian, house church after house church. The list goes on. We have the freedom to make a choice about where we will belong, about who will be our people. We have the freedom to choose the church where we will belong according to our sensibilities around formality versus informality, on whether the sermons are a crisp 9 minutes or an impassioned 45 minutes, based on whether everybody else in the room likes the organ as much as I do and hates the drums as much as I do. We get to make choices based on whether the church and the pastor and the sermons are red enough, or blue enough, or purple enough, or rainbow enough, based on whether or not the people in the room seem like our people enough. And what that gets to mean is that the almost unconscious perceptions about who belongs here get to become conscious decisions about making space for everyone here. Think about what would have to shift if this party very suddenly got a whole lot bigger, if Trinity Episcopal Church over on the corner closed its doors and they all started coming over here. What would be different about that? What would have to change to make it work? Or what about Fredericksburg Baptist, or Fredericksburg UU, or Life Point? What if those folks started coming here? How could we make space at the banquet? What if all the teenagers and the young adults that we've been longing to come here suddenly descended on us like a plague of locusts? What kind of a wedding banquet would that be? And what would it have to become? Even in gatherings that we have now, we as Christians get to keep one eye, not just on the people that go to the church that we belong to, not just the people who would warrant invitations to our wedding, but we get to keep one eye on everyone. Everyone we find in the streets, everyone who could be here, the good, the bad. We get to see them as guests together with us in the banquet hall of God. At the end of the day, all of us, all of these churches and people, we're all responsible for the same thing, which is the work of the church. That work is to love one another as we love ourselves. That work is to attend to the least among us as if they were Jesus. That work is to visit the lonely and feed the poor and to be friends with one another. And I guess I just get to wonder how that work would change if the artificial lines that we draw in the sand went away. I wonder if that work would suddenly become harder if we got to give the care that we give to the people that we've decided are our people, if we gave that work away to people who are not our people, to people who do not look like us or act like us, people that we've decided probably don't belong here. I wonder what it would be like if we gave that care away to whomever comes through these doors on a Sunday morning, and to whomever we encounter when we exit these doors. Amen.